gentlemen, welcome to Destiny Education Hanging with the Fellas podcast with your host, Twa-na.
It's 7 p.m. on Tuesday, and it's time for Hanging with the Fellas. Good evening, gentlemen. It's good to be here with you. Let's get started. Proverbs 18:22. He who findeth a wife findeth a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. I've been reading some of the things that some of you have been commenting, and it makes me sad that so many of you have become disillusioned. So before we start talking about finding the one, I really want to talk about that disillusionment, because this walk with the Father is a hard walk. And it's funny because the Bible's very clear. Jesus says it plainly. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. And that's factual, because what he has us doing is not complicated. Walking on his word, standing on his principles, all of the things that we as believers are required to do, they're not complicated. What's complicated is what happens when we stand on those in the world that we live in. When we're dealing with religious teachings and misunderstandings, when we're dealing with people who think they know God, but really only know their father, the devil. These are the things that make Jesus's burden feel heavy and feel hard. But that's not the thing that's hard. You see, we become disillusioned when we expect God to do something and we don't feel like he shows up. And a while ago, I played a clip from Kanye West where Kanye says, I prayed, but Jesus never showed up. And that was when I learned I needed to be my own God. You see, here's the thing. When we are praying for Jesus to do something, we have to be walking in a certain way. And I'm going to use a very simple example. If I pray for God to send me money and I sit on my couch all day and eat bonbons, what is the probability that the UPS dude is going to show up at my house and bring me a box full of money? While I'm sure there's at least one person in the world that happened to, that is not the norm. That's not usually how it works. If we're not out there doing something to bring about what it is we want, we're not going to receive what we want. Well, then what happens is we become disillusioned because we look at verses and we misunderstand. When the Bible tells us to wait patiently on the Lord, it sounds like we're just supposed to wait. I should be sitting on my couch. What exactly does that mean? Here's what wait on the Lord means. It means that you keep doing what you need to do every day to bring about the vision, the dream, the goal, the desire, but you wait on him to bring about the results. So for example, something plain and simple. I can put out videos every week, multiple times a week. The thing I can control is the quality of the content that we put out. What I cannot control is how people receive the content that we bring them. Do you understand? So I can't control the number of people who choose to subscribe to our channel, but I can choose how I put that information out, how I convey that information, and how I make that thought simple. So when you're looking at, I want to get married, or I'm finding a wife, or I'm having problems with my wife, here's the thing I want you to understand. If you are looking at how to solve this the worldly way, you are going to experience disillusionment. If you are truly trying to do this the Father's way, it's going to require that you release your wants and desires and put someone above yourself. We don't necessarily live in a world that's structured that way. And that's one of the things that becomes the hardest for us when we're walking down this path. There are great women out there, just as our audience of men are dynamic men. It's just a matter of crossing paths with each other. But you guys have to be out doing what it is you want to do. And so I want to share something with you, because This is one of the hardest things, especially for you as a man, to do. It's to deal with your pain. It's to be able to look at your insides and walk through all the things that need to happen. But it's time for you to do that, because until you make that leap, until you make that choice, what's going to end up happening is you're going to keep ending up in this cycle where you feel like you're constantly failing. And you're not a failure. You are not a failure. Doesn't matter what it feels like. Doesn't matter what it looks like. The word tells you, you are not. All things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purposes. That's Romans 8:28. You have the ability to move forward in whatever you want to do, because everything will ultimately work together for your good. The strength you'll develop, the character you'll develop, all of that doesn't seem like it has value until the day comes that you're standing on it, and it's the thing that's holding you up from sinking to the bottom of the ground, to the bottom of the water. And that's why the Father says that we won't be devoured, we won't be overtaken. It's because all those skills, all those traits we've been building are holding us right on top of that water. And that's what it looks like. Don't allow yourself to become disillusioned. Things are never what they look like. They are always better than they look. You see, I want you to always remember this, because what you see is secondary to what's going on out in the spirit world around you. God is always working. You just have to be always willing to listen. And so when we get to these places like Kanye got with Kim, where he's like, I prayed and Jesus didn't show up. Well, no, Jesus showed. But what ended up happening was that Kanye took a path that he couldn't support. And so ultimately he let him stand on his own. You see, it's really complicated sometimes to realize when we are standing in our own way. When we are so wrought with pride, we won't let the Father do what he does best. Instead, we just sit back and we get angry with him because he's not doing more. That's a pride issue. And it doesn't end well. And you can't be surprised by it. I want to tell you about a gentleman that I've had to deal with. This gentleman is a piece of work. Oh my God, he's a piece of work. The happiest day of my life was the day he and I no longer had to communicate, because he's one of those men who's not really a man. And so let me explain to you what I mean by that. Because you all know those kind of guys, those guys who will smile in your face, but they're always looking to stab you in the back when you turn around. Yeah, he's one of those. And so he likes to disrespect his wife. So one day I was in his proximity, begrudgingly and not by choice. And his wife walked in and he said something that wasn't cool. And so I checked him on it. The wife stayed quiet. But I'll tell you what, it fired that man up to a place that he was ready to fight. So what did he start doing? He started going behind my back and doing things. Did it bother me? No. Did any of it work? No. Because there are certain things that you do when you put someone in check. Number one, you don't swear. Because swearing always takes things to another level of aggression that you don't need to go to. It's a waste of your time. Two, people don't like to be outsmarted. And they definitely don't like to be outsmarted by a woman, let alone a black woman. What I want you to understand is this. His pride got into his way so much that he ended up costing himself some things that he really wanted. Some of those things involved me and some of them didn't. And the interesting thing about it is he never, ever, ever realized what he was doing and how he was standing in his own way. This man works like 7 days a week. He does not take breaks. He does not anything. He doesn't stop to have fun. He doesn't smell the roses. His entire life is all about making money. And while money is vitally important, and I'm not going to be the one to tell y'all don't make money, what good is it going to do you when you're dead? The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully, and he thought within himself, saying, what shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruit. And he said, this will I do. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there I will bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said unto him, thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. You see, when you lay up treasure, like that man I was telling you about was doing, when you lay up treasure here on the earth, it can be destroyed at the drop of a hat. It's all about what you're laying up in heaven. But here's the problem with that. And here's where more disillusionment comes up. We don't give credence to what is happening in the spirit realm. We have to look at that. Because here's the thing that God tells you. What you do to the least of these, you've done unto me. Ding, that lays up a treasure in heaven. Now, if you run around and tell everybody what you did, then it doesn't do you any good. You got all your accolades here on earth. Don't let the right hand know what the left hand is doing. Conversely, don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing. You've got to understand that. If you will go and do what you do and keep it to yourself, every single time you do something for someone, you're laying up a treasure. They're keeping a tally. They're marking it. And sometimes whatever is being returned will come from the person that you were able to assist. And sometimes it'll come from somebody else. But that scorecard that God keeps is far greater than anything that happens here on earth. Am I saying, and does that verse tell you that you don't need to have things stored up? That's not what it's saying. When your primary focus is what you have here on earth, that's a problem. When your primary focus is, what am I doing for God? What am I storing for myself up in heaven? You will automatically build things here on earth. That's why people don't understand. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness, and all things shall be added unto you. God isn't opposed to giving you things. That's why it is so detrimental that these religions are out here teaching that God doesn't have abundance for us. We look at abundance and we automatically think, oh, that's just that new wave stuff. No. Opulence and abundance has always been in the lives of the believer. Always. When we don't go out and make different choices, we have to make the choices in our lives. And a lot of us don't do that. We play that victim card. There's something that I really want to make sure that you take away from tonight. To prevent yourself from becoming disillusioned, you have to really begin to dig down to understand who God is and what he's all about. And too many of you are not doing that. Is it hard to walk away from what the world wants? I don't think so, because I see a lot of you do it. It's hard to walk away from the kudos that the world gives you. Because I'm going to tell you straight, God doesn't always give you kudos. Like he'll have you doing work, and it don't look like anything is happening. And then all of a sudden, one day you wake up and you're like, oh my God, what just happened? And it happens a lot, especially lately. That's why you see these people who became overnight successes, who've been on this path for like 10 years. It took time, it took steadfastness, it took pacing, it took all of that to make this stuff happen. And then it looks like, wow, they just came out of nowhere. And all of a sudden, everybody loves their stuff and they want to hear more. And it's just how it goes. It's no different than when you plant a garden. When you put a seed in the ground, is it ready to eat the next day? No. You have to wait for it to go through its process. It's got to form the roots. It's got to form its system. It's got to take in water. All of these things are things that can happen. And if at any point you miss one of those key moments, guess what? It can die and you have to start all over again. Is that really what you want? What I want you to understand is that when I tell you finding the one who's for you begins with first understanding you, it's because there's a lot of roadblocks, a lot of obstacles that are standing in your path. And if you're not willing to overcome those, if you're not willing to address those issues, then you're not ready for the one to come. The first step begins with you deciding who you serve. You're going to serve somebody. It might be the devil, it might be the Lord, but you're going to serve somebody. Whose side are you on? Because once you make that decision and you are solid in that decision, then your life will change. But until the day you decide who you serve, you're going to keep having up and down success. Some areas will be super strong, some areas will be weak, and you cannot serve God in name only. That's why so many people don't get to see the power of God. That's why 2 Timothy tells us they deny the power therein. The thing that can make their life better, they deny. I don't want to see you guys do that. And really, most of you don't want to do that. Because it's not a fun place to be. It's not an easy place to be. And it takes time to adjust your mind to always understand that no matter what you put your hand to, it will be successful. We don't even have to go far for that one. Just go right into the first Psalm. And I love it because he says, you'll be like a tree planted by the river, and your fruit. And he shall be like a tree planted by the river of water that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. That's Psalms 1 and 3. Whatever you do will be successful. You just have to be willing to stay with it. And what happens? When you get frustrated, what do? Oh, it's not working. I don't want to do this anymore. And you move on. And here's the thing. Stop it. Because you don't know how many of you have stopped 4 inches away from success. If you knew that another 4 inches would have been that success, would you have quit? So, remember that. There's a story about a guy who was drilling for oil. And I'm sure most of you have heard this because, churches, and Tyler Perry, I think, was one of the people who told it. A gentleman was drilling for oil. He reached a place where he didn't think it was going to happen. So he quit. And he sold the land. So the next guy came. And he picked up where he left off. They only drilled 4 inches. And that black gold came flying into the sky. They hit an oil vein. That's usually when we quit. Before we close out today, there's something else I want to talk to you about. It's the middle. Listen, when you are in the middle, it doesn't matter what you're doing in life. The middle. See the middle of this book? We are a few pages away from the front, a few pages away from the back, okay? When you are in the middle, it always is the darkest. Everything looks like it's going to fail. It feels like it's not going to work. And this is not an occasional thing. This is an every single time thing. Every time you start something at the beginning and you are going to the end, it is a dark tunnel that feels like it will never end. The darkest point is when you are in the middle. It is vitally important that when that darkness starts to show itself, you remind yourself that you don't want to go back and start all over again. You want to move forward to the other side of that tunnel and see where it goes, because it can look like it's about to cost you. There's this wonderful movie with Jamie Foxx and Tommy Lee Jones, and I love Tommy Lee. I just, like, Tommy Lee will be 99 and still be a dynamic actor. That man is just phenomenal in everything he does and always has been phenomenal in everything he does. That is not to discount Jamie, who's also a dynamic actor, but I love Tommy Lee Jones. The Burial is about a gentleman by the name of Jeremiah O'Keefe and an attorney by the name of Willie E. Gary, who constantly talks about himself in the third person. Willie E. Gary says. It's very funny. And so I love this movie. And so they're in the middle of this case and it is looking dismal, right? Tommy Lee has been robbed by this guy. This guy has tried to bankrupt him. And then the day comes that nobody saw happening. The guy took the stand. The head guy who all this, his name was Ray Lowen. And this guy was a real piece of work, okay? And it was time for him to take the stand. And in the beginning, he did really well. He was calm, he was cool, he was collected, but Willie E. Gary knew exactly how to push his buttons. And he asked him a simple question: how much did you pay for your boat? And he goes, I don't remember. You don't remember how much you personally paid for your boat? This question ended up throwing him off the rails. And he followed it up with, did you ever feel bad about what you'd done to these people? And he said, no. Cost them the case. $175 million later, they had to pay out to this gentleman. The reason that I tell you this is, again, because as we're talking about the middle, it is, I wish I could drill this into your head and you could see this. First off, it's always anticlimactic. Like, it is not some dramatic ending like a Hollywood movie. No, it's like the guy walks up, he comes in and he goes, here's a check for $300 million. I don't want to do this anymore. And he walks out the door and you were ready for a fight. And you're like, what was this? And now you're let down because you're all prepared. Roar, I'm going to take this on. And you got a $300 million check sitting right on the table. I use that number because of the numbers we were just talking about in the movie. It could be 30,500, you name a dollar amount. It's always anticlimactic. It is not a Hollywood ending at all. There will be no lights. They're not going to play music. Dancing people don't dance. Animals don't come and surround you. It's very anticlimactic. But you always make it through. And on that other end, it is truly the most amazing thing, because you sit there with your breath taken away, not understanding what just happened, and it's resolved like that. It is the most frustrating thing in the world, because I'm like, wait a minute, don't I get like a parade? Can I have a concert? Something? Nope. Here you go. Problem solved. Now, I need you to go to work. And that's what God will do. He'll put you right back to work. Well, wait a minute. Can I go out to dinner and celebrate? Yeah. Go out to dinner. But tomorrow be ready to work. That's what it's like. And if you go through and read all the different histories in the Bible, that's how it is for everybody. Daniel was in the lion's den. King came and said, oh God, Daniel, did your God protect you? And he said, I'm fine, my king. And he opens it up and he gets Daniel out. And then, of course, he throws the other people in. That's a little more Hollywood. Like, that's not normally how God does it. That was a little more Hollywood. But then you've got, who's the other one? Joseph. 12 years this man sat in prison. And one day he's standing before the Pharaoh, the Pharaoh, and having a conversation. And next thing you know, he's the third. Really? Did he get a parade? No, he didn't. He just got pulled out of prison. 12 years and it was over in an instant. And that's more and more how they go. There are some, a very few who get that Hollywood ending. I have not been privileged enough to be one of them. I get very anticlimactic. So I warn my guys, listen, it's anticlimactic. Like, it is not gonna be some she shows up fireproof in a dress. I love you and I want to spend the rest of it doesn't usually work that way. It usually ends up being a knock on the door. Hey, you want to go out to dinner? Okay, sure. And we go out to dinner and she's like, are you ready to move back home? Sure. Okay. When are you gonna come? Tonight? Okay. And then you leave together and that's it. And you're like, it's been months, it's been years, it's been whatever. That's how it goes. So I think I have explained that enough. Don't be attached to the outcome. Let the outcome be what it's gonna be. It's always anticlimactic. Always. Like, whatever it is you plan, it will not be that dramatic. I promise you. So I want you to remember that when you're going through the middle. It always looks awful. It always looks like you're gonna fall. It looks like you're gonna sink. It looks like it's over and you're not gonna be able to move forward and you're gonna be done and it's gonna always be hard and you can think all these negative things. But if you can keep yourself moving, if you can keep yourself going, I promise you, there are things along the way that are gonna come to keep building your spirit, to keep you moving, to keep you going. You just have to want to see them. And on that note, we'll finish up finding the right one next week. Gentlemen, please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so that every Tuesday when we launch our new episode, you can join us. Join us on the nights that we can do it live, because I always look forward to seeing you guys live, and that's 7 p.m. over on YouTube. And I'll see you next Tuesday. Have a great week.